Wing Chun forms are an integral part of the system. You need to, A, learn the forms, and then you need to practice them. You need to practice them every day, or, 3 forms one day, 3 forms the next day. Obviously, in the initial stages, it's hard enough just to learn the first form, Sul and Tao, which is in 3 stages in itself. So, practice your forms daily. It's the most important aspect of Wing Chun in far as training. If you can train your forms every day, your skills will increase and your stance will get better and your structure will get better and your understanding of the forms will get better. Obviously, it's important to know why you're doing the forms and what is contained within them, the keys within them and the meanings of what you're doing. They say that if you watch Wing Chun, you can only see half of it, which means that you can only see what the person is doing. You can't see what they're thinking about or where their concentration or the focus is, whether they're thinking about their elbow or whether they're thinking about EastEnders or whatever. So you need to be doing your forms mindfully and with correct positioning and understanding what's going on in them. Train the forms well and your Wing Chun will improve.
The first form is called Sul and Tao, meaning little idea or small thought. Wang Xunleng said that the translation should be young idea, meaning this form is the seed from which the individual system will grow. He described this form as being like the alphabet of Wing Chun. So, even when you progress to making words in Chum Kiu and expressing these words as sentences in Chi Sao, an A is still an A and a P is still a P. Sul and Tao contains reference points for the many basic techniques and concepts, so make sure that you get it right from the outset. Sul and Tao is made up of techniques with direct applications, techniques designed to elicit expanded applications, techniques performed to develop concepts, and techniques designed to load responses into the neural system. Lots of shades of grey, not just black and white. Initially, it is much more important to understand the ideas behind the system than the techniques. The form is split into 3 sections with a different emphasis on each, but the overall aim is to train for a stable stance and structure, develop the triangulation and centre line, and to meditate on the concept of Lat Sao Jit Chung, to develop a relentless forward feeling. In every action in Sul and Tao, you feel what the elbows are doing. Any structure needs a strong foundation or it will not stand up under pressure. Likewise, if you want to hold a conversation, you will first need to learn the language. The first form, and all the concept held within it, must be fully understood in order for a student to progress successfully. Practicing Sul and Tao regularly is the best way to train your body and mind for Wing Chun. Section 1. The first section promotes the correct exercises of the muscles and the joints in the arm and the upper body. Lat Sao Jit Chung, the essential prying or springy force of Tan Sao, Wu Sao and Fuk Sao are also introduced. This feeling is also derived from the stance. This section should be performed slowly and naturally, with all the movements driven from the elbow. Training for forward feeling enables us to spring into any gaps in our enemy's defence without thinking or being distracted by any sideways force. Some people liken this section to Qigong training or Tai Chi, but whilst similar benefits can be gained, the emphasis in Wing Chun is always on training effective fighting skill. You should be thinking about or meditating upon the elbow's movement and the body's forward feeling while performing this section. Section 2. The arms should be relaxed throughout, and often both arms will perform the same move on opposite sides of the body. This has a balancing effect, making excessive body movements less likely for the beginner. This section of the form should be performed briskly, but with thinking and feeling behind it. This section also illustrates recovery techniques and demonstrates various ideas and ways in which we might regain our position when we've lost control of the centre line or are unable to face the enemy. Section 3. The third section, describing the basic actions, opens with Pak Sao, side palm and rolling wrist, going on to demonstrate the stopping force of Tan Sao, applications with Jun Sao, lower Gang Sao, Hun Sao and low palm, Bong Sao, shifting Tan Sao, and Tok Sao or heel palm. Then finally 2 arms working together to recover from a compromised position. This section should be practiced with an emphasis on correct positioning and use of elbow energy. The form closes with a series of rapid punches and a Hun Sao. The second form, Chum Kiu, searching for, building or crossing the bridge. While Sulum Tao demonstrates the basic reference points in the Wing Chun structure, Chung Q trains us to maintain these points whilst fighting a moving target, or arguably multiple opponents. Basic footwork is demonstrated, but more sophisticated footwork is shown later in the dummy. Again, the form can be split into 3 sections, making it easier to understand, but the purpose of each section is not so specific. Section 1. Generally, the first section teaches us about tracking and hitting moving targets and how to turn our stance, introducing rising elbow strikes, turning on the spot, lap sao and jeet sao. Bong sao is considered to be in contact, and the change from bong sao to lan sao with correct elbow positioning is also introduced. Section 2 teaches us about different or multiple targets. Emergency or intercepting or out of contact bong sao teaches the concept of gaining contact while our hands are not already in a good position. It also teaches the concepts and skill of offensive and defensive footwork and kicking, and ways of always chasing your kicks so that your opponent is constantly kept under threat. Also, recovery in the form of regaining the centre and refacing is introduced. In section 3, low action bong is used, which provides a 2-in-1 interpretation of the bong sao for protecting the lower gates, for when you're attacked low when the hands are down, and also for controlling the stance when the arms are dragged out of position. It introduces the controlling of the legs via the arms and a variation of basic kicking action. Another application of recovery is applied by the punch at the end of the form. Biu-ji, or flying fingers, is the third form of Wing Chun. The name is derived from the characters meaning moon pointing finger, and Wang Shunlong believe it taught us to look beyond the pointing finger. This is a way of telling practitioners not to be trapped in the standard rules that they may have been taught in basic training of Wing Chun, and to think outside the box when training or fighting. The mystery surrounding this form stems from the fact that it is often only taught to loyal students who have shown themselves to be capable of a high level of development, both through the system and on a personal level. Frequently, Biu-ji is only taught on a one-to-one basis, and the student must certainly have absorbed all the concepts from Sulum Tao and Chung Q. Frequently, the dummy form is also considered to apply before the third form. Many of the moves break the Wing Chun rules, as it were, coming up from under the bridge from the wrong side of the body. Biu-ji form contains many sophisticated ideas, including ways of minimising one's losses if you have been hit, injured or made a bad mistake during a fight. For this reason, it is also considered to be known sometimes as the emergency or desperation form. This is one reason for the form not to be shown too early in a person's training. It's far better to learn not to make mistakes than to find ways of correcting them after they have been made. The form is also considered important as it may give clues to potential weaknesses of the Wing Chun system, although it also demonstrates how to overcome these problems and weaknesses. The pole, Lak Dim Boon Kwan, literally translates as 6.5 point long pole. It is a short form and introduces the basic parries and attacks. There are only 6.5 techniques, hence the name. Practicing the pole form correctly will also develop massive strengths in the wrists and the stance. It is possible to practice sticky poles techniques with a partner. The idea is to stick to the end of the partner's pole, maintaining a strong position and a good range. This skill is not unlike fencing. When an opening becomes available, trap the pole, strike through or slide down the other pole to attack the hands. It is also possible to train with a pole against the butterfly knives. The Ba Cham Dao, or 8 broadsword cutting techniques, clearly dates to a time when Kung Fu skills were a matter of life and death. Despite popular belief, open hand fighting would be virtually useless against a skilled armed warrior. The Ba Cham Dao is also known as the butterfly knives form because of the appearance of the blades when they're crossed. The form is in 8 sections, demonstrating the various attacking and defensive manoeuvres. The knives are used as an extension of the hand shapes, and many of the common techniques can be performed with knives. When fighting, the aim is to attack the opponent's weapon's arm first. The blades are one-sided, allowing them to be safely moved along the forearm. The thumb, or tying on the guard, can also be used to trap a weapon. Zhong, the wooden man or dummy. Wooden dummy training forms an intrinsic part of the Wing Chun system. Literally translated, Zhong means a wooden stake, or a stake used as a dummy. Other styles of Kung Fu do use dummies to practice against, but the Wing Chun dummy and its form is specifically designed to practice and improve Wing Chun fighting skills and footwork. The form has undergone many changes throughout its history, and although there are many different versions of this form, generally the first 5 sections are similar. Training in a wooden dummy form will improve many aspects of skill, especially your ability to move freely around a strong opponent, arriving in a good position with structure and hitting from the correct stance. Many of the moves are illustrated as recoveries from mistakes, but they can also be interpreted in other ways. The sequences of actions do not need to follow the order of the form. Each action can be seen as a separate move. For this reason, it is good practice to mix up the order and be able to move freely around the dummy, choosing random techniques as they seem appropriate. You can also train the form with an emphasis on a different attribute of your Wing Chun, for example footwork, relaxation, power, angle, each time. The dummy contains many important aspects of Wing Chun footwork. Chum Kiu contains only the basics. The change from the forward stance to the square horse stance and back is especially important to understand. The forward stance is only used while moving forward, so if you meet a very powerful opponent, you will need to use your mobility to get past the arms to access the person. The square stance is used as soon as you stop moving forward in order to allow lateral movement, as this leaves the option of moving in with whichever leg is appropriate when the chance arises. Always remember that a dummy arm could represent the right or left arm of the enemy, and whilst some people think the end of the dummy arm could indicate the wrist, it is actually meant to be the elbow. The lower arm represents a low strike. This could be a punch, a kick or a knee. Also remember that the dummy is made of wood, not flesh and bone, so it will not react in the same way as a person. You need to use your imagination in order to get the best out of dummy training. It is of course possible to strike and kick the dummy with considerably more force than you could safely use against a partner.
I hope the forms video has been helpful to you. Obviously you can watch the video and you can train them. Some of the elements of the forms, the way we practice them in Wong Chun Leung style, might be slightly different from some of the elements of the way you play them, particularly the latter stages, the dummy form and the knives and the pole. That doesn't really matter. What matters is what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and training it regularly. If you train the forms regularly in combination with Chi Sao and various other drills and practices, your skill will increase. Wing Chun is just about doing the work. If you do the work, put the effort in, you'll get something out. The more work and training you put in, the more you'll get out. The people who learn Wing Chun well and quickly and seem to train past everybody else in the class are the people that are going home and practicing their forms at night. So go and practice your forms. Cheers.